This video is brought to you by Captivating History. On May 24, 1819, a fair-haired girl called Alexandrina Victoria of House Hanover came into the world. Unbeknownst to everyone at the time, this girl would become the Queen of England. King George III had 15 sons and daughters. His eldest son, George IV, became king in 1820. George IV died in 1830 without an heir, and the crown passed to the next brother in line, Wilhelm. Crowned King William IV, he was in his 60s when he came to power and ruled for just 7 years before he died. Although he had fathered many children, they were all out of wedlock and unable to succeed him as monarch. The next in line would have been Edward, but he passed away 17 years earlier, a year after the birth of his daughter, Alexandrina Victoria. And so it was that the 18-year-old Princess Victoria became monarch of England. Victoria's mother was very controlling of her daughter. Supported by Sir John Conroy, a naval officer who served in their household as comptroller, Victoria was raised in near isolation. She was kept busy with constant schooling, and she could read and write in Latin, Greek, Italian, French, and German. Victoria was crowned after she turned 18, so she did not need a regent to rule in her stead, much to the annoyance of her mother. Many believed that the reason for Victoria's controlled childhood was her mother's ambition to be the power behind the throne. If true, it was all in vain. The young princess distanced herself from her mother and Conroy as soon as she had the chance. Victoria's coronation took place on June 28, 1838, and over 400,000 visitors watched her procession from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey. The coordinated hour-long parade in the Gold State Coach was somewhat let down by a subsequent 5-hour religious ceremony during which no one seemed to know what they were doing. Still, Queen Victoria would remember that day as the proudest of her life. 3 weeks into her reign, Victoria moved out of her childhood home and into Buckingham Palace. She allowed her mother to move with her but forbade John Conroy from ever visiting. Victoria was the first English monarch to reside at Buckingham permanently, and she quickly set down roots and started a family of her own. On February 10, 1840, she married her cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. It was a love match rather than an arranged marriage, and as regent, Victoria was the one who proposed. She forewent the conventional red gown at her wedding, favoring a simple white one and forever changing wedding tradition. In her journal, Victoria gushes, "His excessive love gave me feelings of heavenly love and happiness. How can I ever be thankful enough to have such a husband?" Soon after the wedding, Victoria became pregnant. She thought it a hardship and an inconvenience, but still went on to have 9 children. Her marriage and motherhood improved the Queen's reputation, and she was soon well-liked by her people. The Victorian era was impactful in many ways, particularly in the way we celebrate Christmas. Victoria and her family combined the traditional English roast dinner with the German traditions of bringing a tree inside the home. With the popularity of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, Christmas spirit became celebrated with renewed vigor. In 1848, a royal family portrait at Christmas showed them gathered around a pine tree decked with candles and festive ornaments, underneath which was all manner of toys. The public lapped it up, and thus began the commercialization of Christmas. Outside the palace gates, life was far from ideal. From 1800 to 1850, the population of Great Britain had doubled, with little done to accommodate them. Piles of garbage and sewage were being produced, which allowed rats and other vermin to run rampant in the squalid streets. Disease spread, and sanitation became a serious issue. Lack of essential sanitary habits, like washing hands, led to illness and death, as diseases like typhoid, measles, mumps, diphtheria, scarlet fever, and rubella were common. Cholera swept through Britain. Believed to have come from the English colonies in India, cholera's main threat was watery diarrhea that caused such severe dehydration, death could occur in just a few hours. Symptoms varied, and many of the infected continued to travel and work as usual, which spread the bacteria far and wide. Many of the poor lived in densely populated urban areas with no sanitation, and 10,000 people died in just 3 months during 1849. Issues of sanitation became highly debated, and in the 1840s, the Nuisances Removal and Disease Prevention Act passed, enabling local authorities to deal with potential health hazards. In 1855, The Metropolitan Board of Works was established to deal with the infrastructure issues relating to the increased populace, including the open cesspools. Despite Dr. Snow's discovery of infected water, the Victorians were still working under the medieval theory that bad smells cause disease. The board decided to replace the cesspools with an underground sewage system that drained directly into the Thames. By the summer of 1858, a heat wave plus the raw sewage running into the river caused a period known as the Great Stink. The Houses of Parliament closed, and those who were able left the city altogether. The chief engineer of the Metropolitan Board of Works, Joseph William Bazalgette, realized that as the Thames was a tidal river, any waste in it would return with the tide. He created a series of pumps beyond the tidal section to ensure the sewage would discharge into the North Sea. On April 4, 1865, the Prince of Wales, Albert Edward, unveiled the Crossness pumping station. The young prince attended the unveiling due to his mother being in deep mourning. 3 years earlier, both Victoria's mother and her treasured husband had passed away. After her mother's death, Albert had taken on Victoria's public duties to allow her time to mourn. When Albert passed away in December of the same year, the Queen was inconsolable. She threw out all of her colorful clothes and would only wear black for the rest of her life. Victoria hid from the public eye, which strengthened the cause of the British Republicans, who wanted an independent government. Instead of answering this challenge, Queen Victoria retreated to Balmoral Castle in Scotland, where she would befriend John Brown, causing much speculation about their relationship. She would not return to the public sphere until 1872. The backdrop of diseases in the Victorian era led to many medical and scientific breakthroughs. Learning opportunities for aspiring physicians and scientists were plentiful, as long as you were reasonably well off and male. The medical industry's penchant for autopsies, used for educational purposes, led to the Victorians' love of Gothic literature, such as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Victorians began enjoying futuristic novels, as the world they lived in was changing so fast it was hard not to speculate about the future. The industrial age had truly arrived, but many people were still in abject poverty. The industry leader paid next to nothing and often employed entire families, including children. Should anyone find themselves out of work, homeless, or orphaned, they were sent to workhouses where they worked, slept, and ate. An amendment to the Poor Laws in 1834 restricted anyone deemed non-disabled from receiving any government support. Anyone in poverty desperately avoided the workhouses, which were a prison sentence with no reprieve. But life was not like this for all Victorians. The middle and upper classes had developed a passion for Egyptian history. Britons were fascinated by the exotic lure of Egypt, and the wealthy boarded steamboats to visit this enticing land. They brought back souvenirs, such as mummified bodies, which the local Egyptian merchants happily sold for a handsome profit. Victorians used these mummies in unwrapping parties, during which owners removed the linen wrappings to expose the body and any jewelry held therein. The added thrill of these parties was the rumors of ancient curses attached to the tombs. During the Victorian era, people became obsessed with ghost stories and conducted seance parties in an attempt to communicate with deceased loved ones. Notions of the occult were becoming increasingly popular, and in 1891, Elijah Bond patented the Ouija board. Victorians began speculating about their place in the world aside from the common notions of God. Charles Darwin published his manuscript on the origin of species in 1859. He knew that it was controversial and may ruffle a few religious feathers. He included in his book that life had been originally breathed by the Creator. But this was not enough to appease pious church members, who labeled his work as barbaric. While medical science was improving, people were also looking at mental health, specifically that of women. Hysteria had been a disease linked to the uterus since ancient Egypt, the general thought being it was caused by lack of sex. The Victorians thought the best cure, therefore, was to find a husband and have children. Physicians gave pelvic massages to patients who did not want to follow this course of treatment. The massages were seen as physical therapy, as the assumption was that women were incapable of sexual satisfaction in the same way as men. Women not cured of their hysteria with marital sex were sent to asylums by the authorities, where they received all sorts of experimental treatments. Even the most well-intentioned asylum facilitators ultimately became more like prisons due to understaffing and an overwhelming amount of patients. Women's rights issues came to the forefront, but instead of being their champion, Queen Victoria called it a mad, wicked folly insisting that women were the weaker sex. Throughout her reign, she subscribed to the notion that she, as a woman, was too emotional to rule as effectively as a man could. In 1858, India, which was already essentially under British rule, was on the verge of collapse. Queen Victoria took advantage of the political unrest and assumed control of all British-owned lands. The English government then passed the Government of India Act, which disbanded the East India Trading Company, who had taken military rule of India in 1757, and transferred the company's administration to the British Crown. In 1875, Queen Victoria was given the title of Empress of India by Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli. She took this role very seriously and created connections with India that allowed students to come to Britain and enter into education. They had English lessons to get jobs that were unobtainable for their parents. While some viewed this in a positive light, others found this forced Anglicization infuriating. To further understand her new subjects, Victoria appointed an Indian secretary called Abdul Karim. She learned characters of the Hindu alphabet and translated her journal entries into Hindustani. Members of the British aristocracy, including the Queen's children, disapproved of this friendship. Victoria did not care, wanting only to be the best monarch she could be for her Indian subjects. While Victorian London has supplied us with many stories, one of the most infamous characters was Jack the Ripper. From August to November of 1888, terror gripped sex workers in Whitechapel as a mysterious figure stalked the streets. No one knows how many women were brutally murdered by the Ripper. The perpetrator earned the moniker due to the horrific knife wounds he inflicted. 4 out of his 5 known victims were in their 40s, his last being only 25. All the victims were found in various states of mutilation, and authorities failed to identify the killer. The last year of the Queen's life was not a happy one. In 1900, Prince Alfred died of throat cancer. She had already lost 2 of her children. Princess Alice and her daughter Marie had both succumbed to diphtheria in 1878, and her youngest son, Prince Leopold, is believed to have died from a cerebral hemorrhage in 1884. Following the death of her son Alfred, one of Victoria's grandchildren died of a fever while serving in South Africa. Victoria spent Christmas at Osborne House on the Isle of Wight, during which time her companion, Lady Jane Churchill, passed away. She remained at Osborne throughout December, and during the new year felt weak and exhausted. After ruling for 63 years, Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom of Britain and Ireland, Empress of India, died on January 22, 1901, surrounded by her surviving children and her pet Pomeranian, Turi. Mourners gathered in London for her funeral on February 22nd. Her coffin was filled with mementos of those she had loved. Albert's dressing gown and, unbeknownst to her children, a photograph of John Brown along with a lock of his hair. The Victorian era was at an end, and the 20th century had begun. To learn more about the Victorian era, check out our book, The Victorian Era, a captivating guide to the life of Queen Victoria in an era in the history of the United Kingdom known for its hierarchy-based social order. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free mythology bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.